Hello and welcome to the session on hacking a meaningful people analytics career. I'm Max Blumberg. I'm a past Accenture consultant. I had a lovely technology startup, which I managed to IPO many, many years ago. Today, most of my work revolves around people analytics in one form or another, consultancy. I'm a career coach. I have a recruitment agency with Dave Milner. And a lot of Salesforce transformation. Academically, I do a lot of work. The most important of all of those, for this session anyway, is probably psychology. So without further ado, let's look at what we're going to be talking about today. I want to talk about the importance of having a meaningful career, particularly in people analytics, as opposed to just having a job and the effect on your well-being in general. Next, I want to have a look at the people analytics work environment that you are currently in or your proposed future environment. Then we're going to look at something that I call a personal deep dive, which is becoming a bit of an expert at knowing your own psychological state and your own attitudes towards work and your motivations. Then we're going to match your career role to your personality that we got there from the deep dive. And then we're going to finally have a look at a section called Take Charge of Your Life, and also how to be different and to stand out from the crowd when you're looking for a job, which I think is so critical. So without further ado, here's a quick exercise, if you could try this. What age do you think that you're going to stop working? You know, they say 60, 65, 70. And this age is rising all the time, of course, as people get healthier, as people need more money because they have to work longer. We all have to work longer and so on. Now, how many years from now is that? So, you know, if you're 35 now, for example, and you plan to stop working at 70, that means you've got 35 years of work ahead of you. Now, plot it like this. So using our example of 35 to 70, you can see, well, you've got through the 35. So the pink area is how many years you've got to go. And then, you know, assuming you're going to live until you're 100, hopefully longer than that, it gives you a really good picture of how many years you've got to get your career right. And you'll see you've already kind of had half of your working time already. And so you remember how quickly that time has gone. It means you don't have a lot of time to mess around to get your career on track, is the point of this slide. So let's have a look at what leaves us as human beings feeling fulfilled in our lives. Well, research definitely confirms that fulfillment does not come from money and fame and power, fun though those things are to have. I'm sure. I couldn't tell you. I've never ever had any of them. But they don't bring fulfillment, psychology research tells us over and over again. Fulfillment is about looking back on your life and feeling that it was meaningful in some way. I mean, I don't want to get dark about this, but you know, you're looking at the grave and you're thinking, has your life made a difference in this world in any way? Have you left some kind of a legacy? And you also want to not feel that you've wasted your life and your potential. When you look back at your life one day, are you going to look back and say, I really used my full potential in my life. I didn't waste my life doing work that I didn't actually enjoy. So if a meaningful life is so important to our well-being, how do we go about creating this? So let's understand the importance of a meaningful career. In the first instance, then, how do we choose our careers? Well, as we've said, our career is going to consume about 1/3 of our life. And how do many of us choose our careers? Well, typically these come from our friends, parents, families, culture. I know my parents always hoped I hope that I'd grow up to be a doctor. I am a doctor, but I don't think the kind of doctor that they had in mind. But you often find that society pushes what career you should do. And as a result of you not choosing your career, we often get the feeling that something in our life is missing. And that's what we're going to be having a look at today. So the reason is that if other people are making your career decisions for you, or you're fitting into the cultural norm of where you are, that is going to lead to a feeling and a sense of emptiness in your life. You need to emphasize personal decision-making based on your own dreams and your own desires. So I draw heavily on the work of a guy called Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp during the Second World War, and he discovered that the people who managed to survive and come through with a sense of hope were those who lived in a sense of meaning. So where did he get this from? Well, if we look at non-human primates, chimpanzees, monkeys, vervets, etc., they typically operate at two levels of existence. They have what you call the biological level, which is about meeting your physical and your survival needs, air, water, food, sex, etc. And then there's the social level, which is the need to belong in society, to fit in, to have status. Now, for those of you that know Maslow, you'll see this is quite similar to Maslow, that you have to meet the biological needs and you have to meet the social needs. But is that really all there is to life? It's like, having enough food and having a good bunch of friends to give you self-esteem. No, Frankl said it's absolutely not. He said human beings to feel fulfilled and satisfied, so that when you look back on your life one day, you have an additional important level that you need to meet. You also need to fulfill the psychological level, and that is the need of human beings to live a meaningful life by expressing your individuality, by making decisions about what is right and what is wrong, and using your full potential. So you see how different the meaning level is to the biological and the social level. They are just animal kind of instincts, whereas the meaning level is truly what separates you from the animals, is making your own decisions, expressing your individuality, and using your full potential to do amazing things. So that gives us two kinds of people, really. The first kind of person we call a conformist, and they are people who only cater to their biological and social needs. They emphasize physical and social levels. They fit in at all costs. They avoid taking risks in their lives, which might help them grow. They let other people grow their values. They always agree with everybody because they don't want to make ructions or upset anybody. They typically don't believe that they can have a better life than the life that they're currently living anyway. And they avoid reflecting on their experiences. Now, contrast that with what we're going to call individualists, or what Frankl calls individualists. These are people who emphasize the psychological level in their lives, about making meaning. Their goal is to use and fulfill as much of their potential as they can before they die. They're not afraid to give up their physical and their social needs to achieve their potential and create meaning. For example, think of somebody like Nelson Mandela, who, despite his physical and social needs on Robben Island as a prisoner his whole life, was still able to create meaning by getting rid of discrimination and apartheid without social and physical needs. And I think you'll find many heroes that we have in our lives today are people who gave up physical and social in order to create a meaningful life and a meaningful career. They're not afraid of conflict. They typically stand up for what they believe in, for what is meaningful. I think we're seeing a lot of this in the Ukraine at the moment, where people are standing up for something that's right, even if it means putting their own lives at risk. They could run away, but many people are staying there and fighting for what they believe is meaningful. So the one day when they look back on their lives, they'll say, if they make it through the war, because of course it's a risk, but when they look back on their lives, they'll say, well, I did the right thing by standing up and fighting for what I believe in. And you can do this in people analytics too, as you'll see in a second. Individualists are people who collect experiences in their lives, not social and physical artifacts. In other words, they experience many different things, traveling and art, and things that don't even necessarily cost money. But by the time they are finished on this earth, they have experienced a huge range of things, which is very exciting. And they're probably more afraid of not trying at all than they are afraid of failure. In other words, they say, well, I'm going to give this a go. And if I fail, well, then I fail. But it would be worse to look back and say, I didn't even bother to try. I'd rather try and fail than not try at all, is kind of the word of the individualist. And so I believe that these are the people on earth who are the happiest. Maybe happiest isn't the word. They're the most fulfilled people on earth. And you are free to choose whether you are going to be a conformist or whether you're going to be an individualist. But make no mistake, individualism definitely requires courage. It means you have to stand up to other people. It means that you have to stand up for what you believe in. It means you have to stand up for what you believe is wrong and to call it out if something is wrong. In fact, it means that you have to stretch your boundaries and your limits all the time, experimenting with new roles, experimenting with new things, trying and not being afraid to fail. That is real courage. And that is how you create meaning. And that is how you avoid having an empty life. So I'm going to give you some client examples of individualists that I can only say after these stories that I'm about to say, that I've had the honor of working with. And if you recognize yourself here, that's great. The first client I'm thinking of is somebody who was a new joiner in people analytics at a very large corporation. She was very into the issues that their company was having with female attrition, and really wanted to address it, but there was no budget or money or anything for her to run a huge project. And she personally lobbied one of the directors, one of the global directors of this huge company, as a junior people analytics person, and got budget. I can tell you that it was a female director. She chose very carefully. And in the end, she created a huge female community, improved retention, did a lot of people analytics around it. And I think that she feels really satisfied with what she's done with her career, created a meaningful career, even though it was quite uncomfortable having to do all of that lobbying. The next client was at an energy company, and really believe that to create a sustainable future, you need sustainable workforces in energy companies. And this person single-handedly lobbied that all of the recruitment and all of the hiring processes would be screening and selecting people who were more likely to develop a sustainable outlook on the future than people who just thought, we need to make as much money from energy products, oil, etc., as we possibly can. There's somebody who can look back on their career and say, I really made a difference to sustainability because this is one of the biggest oil companies in the world. And the third client example I'm going to give you here is a person who came into a people analytics function, which was an okay function. They were doing all right, very small, and made a mission during our coaching sessions to say, I want this to be the most important function in the whole global company. And I'll tell you, they may not have become the most important function, but it certainly had the attention of the CEO, and of all the senior management would come to this person and ask for advice whenever it came to people, even before they went to HR. I'm not sure that the HRD would have loved it, but hey, as I said, if you want a meaningful career, you've got to be able to manage conflict if necessary. As well. So there are just three examples of individualists working. So let's understand the people analytics environment that we're working in. What is the purpose of people analytics? I've said this many times, but I'm going to say it again here, is that to continue receiving funding from your annual budget, every business support function, including people analytics, must demonstratively support execution of your company's strategy. Your business strategy, the organizational strategy. It's no good taking money, doing tons of analytics, and not being able to show that the budget that they're giving you is not contributing to your company executing its strategy. They're going to stop giving you the money. And people analytics can support business strategy in two ways. I call them alignment and monitoring. There's some new buzzwords which I'm going to be introducing into the industry over the next couple of months with the help of Alec Levinson and Dave Milner. Alignment is the use of statistical and workforce modeling to guide the design of talent processes, which build a workforce capable of executing your business strategy. Alignment is much more effective than, monitoring, which we'll look at in a second, or intuition or astrology for building talent processes. If you want to build a recruitment process, to know if one particular candidate is good or not, don't read that person's tea leaves. I'm being facetious, or look at their horoscope. But the equivalent is saying, well, from experience, I can tell you what a good candidate looks like. They look like me. No, that's not analytics. That's intuition. And 9 times out of 10, it's really inaccurate. Statistical and workforce allow you to align your people analytics strategy with your business strategy. The other part of people analytics is called monitoring. Monitoring is just monitoring the execution of the processes. So that's your dashboards and your graphs and your visualization. But there's no statistical modeling or anything hugely proactive. You're just saying, how well is the L&D process going? How well is the succession planning going, etc. So really where you want to be, if you want to support business strategy, is in the alignment field, but you do need to monitor how well your processes are going as well. Although I would call that the lesser task in people analytics. If you want to learn more about this, go to my website, and on the homepage, you will see a video called The Business-Driven HR Model, which I think you will find very interesting. And I think it's a must-watch for anybody in people analytics, because it shows you the future of people analytics. A quick look at people analytics. What are the competencies required for each of those? For the alignment part, that's the aligning the people analytics or HR strategy with the business strategy. You can see the list of skills that you need there, the consultancy skills, etc. And while we're at it, I want to say that the risk of automation for those of you planning to go into alignment is very low, because those functions, processes even, cannot easily be automated. Whereas monitoring, the visualization, descriptive statistics, and your tableaus and your Power BIs, if that's all you're working with, that stuff is going to become automated really soon and really quickly. So if you're going to invest a lot of time and money in just learning dashboarding and visualization skills, I think there's a very strong risk that you will be out of a job in that field anyway in 5 or 6 years. You definitely want to start picking up your alignment skills on that. Just another point that's of interest to the career environment. Just remember that at the company you're working for, if you're working for a for-profit company, that is, the goal of the shareholders is to maximize profits by maximizing employee productivity, that's you, by maximizing employee productivity, even at the expense of your well-being and quality of life. They would be very happy at most companies for you to work late into the night. I know a lot of companies are saying they're not doing that anymore, and we'll talk about why they might be saying that. But just remember, the goal is to maximize shareholder profits, whatever it takes. Your goal as an employee is self-actualization, finding that meaningful career or meaning in your life, using your full potential. Now, these two goals of actualization versus maximizing productivity are not necessarily incompatible with each other. I'm not saying that. But if you're on your executive leadership team, whose side are you generally going to take? The shareholders who pay your salaries and ensure that you've got capital in the company, or your employees who you may perceive as taking capital out? Of course, that's absolutely not true, because there wouldn't be a company with employees. But the executive team's perception is often that the shareholders are more valuable and that employees can be more easily replaced if necessary, which might go some way to explaining the high attrition rates that we see in many companies. So what I'm saying here is, don't be fooled. Not all employee experience programs are for the benefit of the employees. They're just as much about improving retention to improve your productivity which improves the shareholder's life rather than improving your actualization. So be very careful when choosing an employer to find somebody that actually has your actualization at heart as well as the shareholders, not one at the expense of the others. The next is this concept of a personal deep dive. I believe, and I guess I have to as a psychologist, is to say that the greater personal insight you have into who you are as a person, the greater the personal fulfillment that you're going to achieve. The more you know yourself, the better you'll be able to choose the right work environment and discover your purpose and your passion so that you can work towards it and have a meaningful career. And, what is your purpose? Do you know what your purpose is? I mean, I'm asking you directly as somebody who is watching this video. What is the world asking of you? Is it really saying get all the power, the money, security? Or is it saying making the world a better place is what you should be doing now? If Viktor Frankl is right, you need to go beyond your physical and social levels to find your purpose. You need to find purpose in something meaningful, like the examples I gave of somebody working on making life better for the female employees at the company or creating sustainability. That will give a far more lasting psychological benefit than having tons of money and tons of power and security, etc. But the only way you're going to get that is through personal insights into what is your passion in life. So the way to do that is through psychometric testing, and I'll actually be doing this live in the workshop. I'll be sending out an invitation for you to come along and be tested if you want to, and we'll do some feedback. Psychometric testing is fantastic for identifying the right role for you, and also what development that you're going to need for the role that you choose. My clients typically complete a psychometric test battery of things like values, their personality, emotional style, reasoning ability. And as I say, we're going to look at all of those in the workshop where we'll put some of this. Another way you can gain personal insights is by doing a SWOT on yourself. And that's where you look at your strengths and your weaknesses. What are you good? What are you weaker at? What are the opportunities and threats in the role and the job market you're going into in the particular sector or company that you're looking to go to? Another way of getting personal insights is from your friends and from your colleagues. You can almost do a little survey. And another way to do it is through coaching. And I'll look at that quickly. What does a coach do? Well, I think the most important role of a coach is really to be a sounding board for you. Because I find often that just describing a problem fixes it. There's something called rubber duck debugging. Go and ask any of your developer friends. Is where you have a little yellow rubber duck, one of those. In fact, I think I've got mine right over here. And you can see that, come here, ducky. Just describing the problem that you are having with your coding or your people analytics to the rubber duck. While you are describing it, often the answer will come to you. That happens so often with many clients is that I say, tell me the problem. And by the time they finish telling me the problem, they've actually solved it themselves, but they needed someone else to talk to. And of course, a coach also balances listening with really hard questions at times. A coach might also be a consultant if they have expertise in your domain, which we're talking about people analytics here, and also to help you with emotional issues. Often if you're moving into leadership, you're going to not need to just manage your emotions, you're going to need to manage the emotions of your team as well. And a coach's role is to help that. So what should you be looking for in a coach? Well, obviously, you need to shop around and make sure that you actually get on with each other. The coach should understand the world that you're operating in. Bear in mind that a coach is not your friend because they need to push you as well. If they're really, matey and your best pals and BFFs, etc., it's going to be much harder to push you. So don't get that close that you don't have the professional relationship. And preferably you should be using an evidence-based coach rather than somebody who's just operating from gut feel. Okay, the next section then to having an outstanding and meaningful people analytics career is about matching your role to your personality. So this is all about applying what you learned in your deep dive. We're going to go into this in the workshop much more, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much here. But generally in personality psychology, we'll say that there are 5 types of personality, not 5 types. Each of us has got 5 characteristics. So we each have a level of conscientiousness, a level of agreeableness, neuroticism, how often we get upset, in other words, openness to new experiences, and extroversion. So, when I'm working with clients and they say, I want to be a leader, then I know that to be a leader, typically what they're going to need is, you don't want extremes of conscientiousness. You don't want somebody who's hyper conscientious because nothing gets done, or somebody who's got no conscientiousness at all. You want somebody who's fairly average. Likewise, with agreeable, you don't want somebody who just agrees with everything that everybody says or disagrees with everything that everybody says. So again, no extreme scores. Neuroticism in leaders, I'm looking for a low neuroticism score. Sometimes it's called emotional stability, by the way, which is the opposite. So we say we want a high emotional stability score. But you don't want somebody who gets upset. You want somebody who's level-headed. Openness to new experiences. Again, I don't want to see extreme scores. Somebody who's completely open will be trying something new every day and never finishing up any projects. And extroversion, you're going to be dealing with people a lot of the time. Therefore, having a slightly higher extroversion, but not too high that you want to party 24/7, has got to be a good thing. You're going to need some financial abilities so that you can align people analytics activities to outcomes. And you're obviously going to need some team management skills, etc., to go with those. Other roles, and we'll look at these in the workshops, are consultants, not going to go through it now, and technical roles. We'll have a look at some of the things that you might need to choose based on your personality. And of course, don't choose roles that are likely to be automated. So as we come up the straight here, it's really about, taking charge of your life. Be your own boss if you want a great career. Don't let other people make decisions about your life. Don't let your boss make decisions about your life. You need somewhere where your own decisions are respected. Write your own story, in other words. Don't let other people write your stories for you. If your job is unsatisfying, move on. You saw how few months you've got left to make your career work. Get some career advice. Create a startup of your own. Do something different, but don't stay in a bad job. Imagine looking back on your life and saying, I stayed at that place for too long and I wasted years of my life. And ignore people who tell you that you're going to fail when you take on a meaningful project. It's really important that the act of trying is more important than the act of succeeding a lot of the time. Ignore people who say that you're going to fail. On that. And we'll have a look at, Bezos and Musk as great examples of people who tried. Finally, I want to have a look at this concept of being different and standing out from the crowd. So what I mean here is don't play on a level playing field with everybody else. For example, if you're applying for a role, don't use the same application system as everybody else is using. Go out of your way to try and meet senior people. I have a technique which I teach called the circle of leverage, which I learned in the States, by the way, from a guy called Michael Boylan, absolute genius. It's got me meetings with Richard Branson, Stelios from EasyJet, Irene Dorner, who was head of a director, of HR at HSBC. I remember the one thing that Branson and Dorner both said to me is that we're not as interested in what you have to sell, Max, as to how did you manage to get a meeting with me? Because that is a skill I'm very difficult to meet with. You need to use those skills to get meetings with the right people when you're applying for a job. If you go through the standard application system as everybody else, you're not going to, if there are 100 people applying, you've got a chance of 1 in 100 of getting that job. Whereas if you manage to get a meeting with somebody, your chances improve dramatically. Research and find ways to meet my hiring managers. I mean, I've managed to be in a pub, find out what pub somebody has a drink at, and managed to be at the pub to run into them coincidentally. If you want it badly enough, that's what you have to do. And, learn the language of management. When you're talking to a manager to try and get a role, speak in their language, not in your language of people analytics. Find what they want to get out of their role. Another important thing to do when you are wanting to level the play, not play on a level playing field, should I say, is inspire other people. I really try and do that a lot in my life. Be inspired yourself so that you can inspire other people. Copy people who inspire you out there. Look at what makes them different and stand out. Become a thought leader yourself. Find some aspect of people analytics that you can specialize in and become known. Network. Use social media to your advantage. Make videos like this one. Write clever articles. Get a coach who can help you to do it if necessary. And be nice where possible. Don't let life be so serious to you that you ever be unpleasant. I remember I met a politician once who I said, "What is your secret of success?" And this person said to me, "Never make enemies on the way up." And I thought that's a great bit of advice. And finally, to close, all I can say is start now. Don't die with the music inside you. Your energy declines with every passing year of your life. Don't wait and say, "I'll start this next year," or "I'll look for a better job next year." You have to start your career from where you are now. The only thing that needs to change is you, not the world. If you're waiting for the world to change, it's not going to happen, and probably not for the better. You have to change if you want to have a better career. So ask yourself, what is holding you back? Discover your real barriers. They'll come out in your personal deep dive. They'll come out in your coaching if you ask the right questions so that you can move on. And persist. Just remember that successful people in the world are not there because they're just clever. They persist where other people give up. They've got great reasoning ability, and we'll look at that at the workshop. But Musk is a great example of somebody. Not all of his projects succeed, but like a baby, every time he falls, he gets up again and tries. He keeps trying until he gets the one big one. And I think you'll find that every single person that's made their own money, in other words, people who haven't just inherited it all, but everybody who's made big money on their own has tried at least 10 times before they became successful. They've had 9 failures for every 1 success. And that could be your career, 9 bad jobs till you find the perfect one. And whether you succeed or not in getting your career is entirely up to you and no one else. You can't blame anybody else. You can't give credit. It's up to you. So go for it. And thank you very much for joining this session today. I hope you found it helpful.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Max, for this wonderful session. And
thank you.
I'm sure you know that we're not going to let you go without asking a couple of questions. And let's talk about that final section of the presentation, because where you were talking about multiple failures. Interestingly enough, I was part of a Twitter chat last week where the same topic was brought up, that when you look at Twitter threads, for instance, a lot of people tweet about what made them successful and how they succeeded and how they got rich or how they got the dream job. Not that many people actually tweet about their failures, right? That, like you mentioned, that they, out of 10 times, they failed 9 times before they actually got that dream job. Can you tell us why you think that is? Why are failures such an off topic? Because we probably learn more from our mistakes than from our successes, right? If we want to grow.
That's true. I think that in life, generally, transactions like being employed or buying something occur because somebody has shown you a successful track record. And therefore saying, well, here are all the places I've failed, without saying, but here are all of the successes, means that you are less likely to get the role. And therefore, people tend to want to leave a lasting memory of what works. In fact, you've just reminded me, Anita, of something. If anybody's watching this and wants to have a look, because I see there's a question in the chat slightly related, which I'll come to. But there's a video on YouTube. If you put in Max Blumberg positioning game, it shows you about how to leave the correct impression in the mind of the person that you're talking to if you're looking to create a company, or if you're looking for a job, or whatever purpose. And so I think that's what it's all about, Anita. It's about positioning yourself as being a winner. But internally, I think it's really important for you to acknowledge, I agree with you 100%, you have to acknowledge your own failures and go into situations willing to fail. I mean, you're an expert, I know, in investment, for example. And you help a lot of companies with due diligence, etc. You know, if you look at venture capital companies, and this is an analogy to recruitment, is that generally they will have a number of projects running at any time, 6, 7 projects running at a time. They only expect one to give them a positive ROI. And that is how we must treat life, is that you try a number of projects. When you hit the big one, it's a really big one. And another thing is that people often think that entrepreneurs, they are risk takers, they are very risky. That's not true. Entrepreneurs are the most calculated risk doers in the world. They look really carefully at market research. They speak to people. They understand the product market long before they dash in. I think the impression we have, the wrong impression, is that an entrepreneur is a speculator, or somebody who just goes in and speculates and puts money in, risky money. That's not what entrepreneurs do. You lose your money very quickly on that.
Yeah, and before we switch to the question in the Q&A, let me ask one follow-up question. With that, what is the role of luck? Because that is also something that is, from my perspective, a little bit underplayed, right? Sometimes you just get something because you are in the right place at the right time, or you happen to walk upon or to meet the right connection with the right story. And that's, I think, the other part that's underplayed a little bit. Two people with exactly the same position don't necessarily come to the same results. Sometimes just a helping hand in the form of luck plays a role. How do you see that?
So I have a very strong view on that. I think luck plays a role. If this is 100% from, well, let's say it that way, many people think that luck is that much of that much, 40%. I say that luck is very much smaller than you think. And that is because you can create your own luck. We spoke a little bit about, and that relates again to this question as it happens, is if you apply for a job, which is the example I gave in the video, and you use the company's applicant tracking system, so you go to the website and you put it in the same way that everyone else is, then it's luck if you get the job, because if there are 200 people applying for that role, you have a chance of roughly 1 in 200, assuming that you're all got similar skill sets, which you probably do have. That's luck. If, however, you find out where the hiring manager or the user manager likes to have a drink in the evening, and you happen to find yourself at that place and at the bar, and you wait for an opportunity, or you even walk up to say, I just wanted to shake your hand and introduce yourself, find a good positioning statement, which is in that YouTube video as well, and make the opportunity happen. You now have more luck than the other 199 people who are going for the job in the standard way. So that's why I accept, of course, the person in the bar might tell you to bugger off and stop harassing them. But we said earlier that a meaningful life doesn't come from waiting. You must risk this kind of conflict if you want to get it. Can you imagine Bezos or Musk being afraid to go and talk to somebody? They would go straight up, and the person might hit them. They would not give up at that point. They will persist. And so that is the role of luck, is that, it's the old saying that everybody says, you're probably sick of hearing it, that, Gary Player, the harder I practice, the luckier I get, etc., etc. I think it's true. I don't, in my personal life, as most of my colleagues will tell you, Alec Levinson, Dave Milner, most of my clients will tell you, that I don't wait for luck. I am very proactive. Yes, I piss a lot of people off in the process. I'm sure a lot of people will tell you that, but it tends to make things happen much more than waiting for luck or trying to do or doing the same as everybody else. Important to stand out. So I think that's a great question, Anita.
Okay, so I know there's a question in the Q&A. Unfortunately, I cannot see it, but would you like to...
No problem. So thank you. This is from Lena Jaeger, who asks, could I explain the circle of leverage in a little bit more detail, please? So yes, that circle of leverage was the technique I was talking about when you want to get a meeting with the hiring manager. So let's assume that you're not going to go for the bar, meet the manager at the bar method, which has got social connotations which are risky as well, although I've used it with clients, by the way, many times. Circle of Leverage, you can probably still find the book on Amazon by Michael Boylan. It's called The Power to Get In. And as I said in the video, it's got me meetings with Branson, with Irene Dorner, head of HR at HSBC, with Stelios at EasyJet. And again, as I said, they weren't so much interested in what I was trying to sell. They were more interested in saying, Max, how did you get a meeting with me? Can you teach this to my sales force? Because I want them to get meetings with senior people like me. So in case you can't get the book, the system is like this. You choose the target person at the organization that you're going for. So let's use Virgin, Branson. You draw a circle around Richard Branson. Who is Richard Branson reporting to? Well, he tends to be the boss. But there is a chairman of the board above him. Who are two of Branson's peers? So you would choose two other vice presidents or two other VPs or senior directors. And then you would choose somebody that reports in to Richard Branson. So this is exactly what I did. You then write letters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to every one of those people all the way around. That's the circle and the person in the middle, right? So 5 letters go off and they say to this effect, dear Miss or Mr. whoever it is, so-and-so, I'm writing to you, and you say the names of all of the other people. So now immediately you're creating consequences. They can't throw your letter into the bin and say they didn't receive it. I'm writing you to find out who is the best person to speak to about finding a role at your company. I am writing to you, and then you mention the names of their biggest competitor or more competitors. So it's not just 5 letters that you are posting that day. It's 10 letters. So you are also writing to EasyJet. So the head of people analytics at EasyJet, for example, and the head of people analytics at Virgin would be a good example. So 10 letters go into the post box, and all of them say, so the letters to EasyJet are saying, dear head of people analytics, I'm writing to you, to find out who is the best person to speak to at EasyJet about getting a people analytics role. I'm doing this as part of a campaign looking for a role between yourselves and Virgin. So everybody gets a tailored letter, and there's a consequence for that letter. 4 days after that, or whenever you think the letter has landed, you phone the assistant of the, not the target person, but the other people around. And you phone the assistant, you say,
we have 45
seconds.
Sorry. This is going
read the book, and you phone them, ask whether the letter arrived, and they will tell you that they've passed it on probably to the target person. You phone them, they've received 5 letters or 4 letters, and and you will probably get the meeting that you are looking for with that person. It's an incredibly successful and effective technique.
It's fascinating. I had never heard about that. So tell me quickly, are those paper letters or are those emails?
You probably would do email, but paper letters still have a big effect, especially if you make it like a registered letter.
Yeah, outsized effects probably. Thanks, Max. That was great information, also very practical. And looking forward to your next session.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Anita. Very kind of you.